Hello, everyone. This is Officer Cervantes. Thank you for joining us today. Just a friendly reminder, when you ask a question, if you like, you can turn on your camera. Chief, you may begin.
So hello, everyone. Just as I want to frame my remarks with this, looking at the violence that we saw this past weekend. This is the first time in more than 4 weeks that we had 6 homicides in a short period of time, from Friday into Sunday. Previous periods that range from as few as 1 on the week of 8/20 to 8/22, 2 from 8/13 to 8/15, and last weekend we had 4. So there, we did see 13 victims shot this past weekend, which was in comparison fairly consistent with what we saw the previous 3 weeks. And where the shooting violence is occurring, 5 of those homicides or victims shot occurred in those 4 geographic areas of Southwest, Newton, Southeast, and 77. Our people were out and added resources, strengthened our patrols as well as our investigative responses. And as a number of you saw throughout the course of the weekend, some of those deployments resulted in foot chases, vehicle pursuits of individuals that were armed with handguns and had been involved in shooting violence. On Friday, in fact, we had detectives from our special investigation section actually conducting a surveillance operation or initiating a surveillance operation in South Los Angeles when they rolled into the middle of a car-to-car shooting that resulted in the death of a young man. So these are instances that give us all pause. It's important that we continue to work with our gang reduction, youth development, outreach, and ambassadors to quell the disturbances, the arguments, the fights, the pettiness that results in too many instances of escalation of violence. Overall, we still have a overall reduction in our Part 1 crime of 1.7%. We have an overall reduction in our property crime of 4.2%. That's more than 2,500 fewer property crimes. However, we are seeing pressure in all of our property crime theft rates, whether it be burglary, auto theft, or simple thefts. And our overall violence, we've seen a 6.1% increase with 21.8% increase in homicides. That's 47 additional homicides this year versus last. And victims shot, we've had a total now of 995 victims that have been shot. Last year, that number was 748. And so our challenges, our largest challenge continues to be in shooting violence occurring, and our efforts to combat that will include identifying those responsible and bringing them before the criminal justice system, and seeking the full weight of the law and prosecuting those that are gun toters as well as those that are pulling those triggers. And with that, I'll end my remarks and take any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Our first question will be from Mr. Steve Gregory. Go ahead with your question.
Mute. Chief, good afternoon. Quick question about homelessness. I just wanted to know when the last time it is you spoke with County Sheriff Villanueva about dealing with homelessness. Lately, he and his teams have been meeting with residents in what would be LAPD's jurisdiction. And I just wondered if you are concerned at all about the Sheriff's Department's movements in this area and how frequently you discuss these things with the Sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you. So the Sheriff and I see each other on generally a monthly basis. I think it's about 2 weeks ago is when we last sat down and talked. And I'm aware that he has, I understand he was walking the Venice boardwalk this weekend, as I did yesterday, and was engaging with members of that community. And I've heard, remarks and attributions about the Sheriff's actions in the Venice boardwalk and the resulting removal of individuals experiencing homelessness. Our experience has been with the Sheriff's Department. They've done outreach and engagement, but the real success of that operation there wasn't any arrests. I'm not aware of the Sheriff's Department making any arrests along the Venice boardwalk, but rather the outreach services that were provided, the housing to the hundreds of people that were there. And that was bolstered and augmented by added patrols by LAPD, and those patrols have continued, as well as Rexton Park and added sanitation services. Yesterday was, enjoyed the afternoon walking along the Venice Strand, and did not see any tents in the sense of any of the homelessness that I had seen just a month earlier. So it's been quite a transformation. As to continued reports about the sheriff being in different parts of LA City as part of LA County, I recognize as an elected official that he makes a number of political appearances and talks about public safety here in Los Angeles as well as in the county. And I look for us to continue to work together for the safety of the residents here as well as the overall safety of this county.
Yeah, but I understand that, and I know you want to work together on all of these things, but it seems like the sheriff is kind of walking to the beat of his own drum. I'm just wondering if you're concerned, and the question is whether or not you're concerned he's going to take. People are starting to get confused, and they're blaming the city for not being reactionary enough, and they keep thinking now that the sheriff's department's the only agency doing something. And I happen to know that your MEU and others are just as busy at work helping with this too, but I'm just wondering if you're concerned that residents are not seeing it clearly.
So I'm not concerned at this point. I was asked a similar question yesterday, and I remarked upon a famous quote that it's amazing what you can get done when you don't care who gets credit for it. I think right now the actions of the Los Angeles Police Department and working leading with services of our other county LASA and other service providers, as well as recreation and park and sanitation. That's a full spectrum and a full service delivery that's getting results. I'm not satisfied with the level of results. I think that we need more mental health and more outreach workers all throughout the city. We need more housing all throughout the city, and we need more sanitation all throughout the city. Policing is there to provide for the safety of everyone involved. And I'm hopeful that if there is confusion about what the sheriff's department is actually doing within our community, I hope to set the record straight. I don't believe there's any enforcement action being done, particularly against homelessness by anyone within his group of deputies. They have a number of challenges throughout this county. Their homicide rates, their encampments, their challenges of disorder and violence exists outside the city of Los Angeles, and in some instances to a greater degree than they exist here. And what I'm not going to do is get into a turf war or debate with him. He's the sheriff of the county. He has jurisdiction throughout the county. What I ask is, and what he and his people are doing, is that they work with us and we work with them to coordinate our respective responses and our work for the safety of all Angelenos. And again, if there's confusion on this, I'm sure that there's some posturing by a number of individuals relative to roles and responsibilities and what people are or aren't doing. I'll stand by our results and the efforts of our work, like you said, our MEU, SMART teams, and the day-to-day beat cop that's out there, I believe, a tough and difficult job and doing a hell of a job.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will be from Marla Tejas. Go ahead, Marla, with your question.
Hello, Chief Moore. This is Marla Tejas from Fox 11. Thank you so much for taking my question. This is my first time attending one of your Zooms, so happy to be called on. I'm curious to get your take on the recent pursuits that have resulted either in the death of an innocent driver, as we saw last week in Koreatown, while your crew was tracking a human trafficking suspect. Just yesterday on Labor Day, an innocent driver in one of your cruisers at an intersection in South LA. This morning in Hollywood, another couple of innocent drivers hurt. So, what's your reaction to that? And when, the public gets concerned, when are pursuits just too dangerous to cover?
And there are instances, Marla, and welcome to the meeting today. There are instances in which the circumstances of the underlying offense do not warrant a continuation of that pursuit. The department uses a balancing test as to what is the public safety risk, what is the alleged offense, and the officer or the senior officer involved in that pursuit, determination to start that, they have to be able to articulate the basis for it. You've talked about an instance in Hollywood Division where a vehicle containing a couple males was observed dropping off or leaving behind a victim of human trafficking. An initial stop was efforted, and then a pursuit ensued. And unfortunately, the reckless actions of those suspects killed an innocent motorist and injured those individuals in the pursuit as well. A handgun was recovered. I believe maybe 2 handguns was recovered from that event. We investigate those circumstances with a great deal of scrutiny, including the statements of what the officers actions were, the basis for those actions, and we'll evaluate the physical evidence as well, the video, the radio traffic accounts, and what and how the collisions occurred. And then we'll come to a determination of whether the officer's actions were consistent with our policy. Reverence for life is the guiding principle in our use of force, but also in all actions that we're engaged in. And we have supervisors and command oversight involved in the actions, and we are not hesitant to call off pursuits, whether it be at a supervisor level. The officers we've seen discontinue their pursuits themselves, involving some of the ones that we've seen this last week. The officers have themselves seen the circumstances to be too dangerous and they've disengaged. But we've also had the orders of those pursuits to be disengaged by supervisors, watch commanders, and also command and staff officers. I watched with a significant amount of concern to a pursuit just last weekend up in the Mission Hills area of an individual that was a known suspect of violent and wanted individual, and an ensuing pursuit that involved our officers' actions. And we have tactics such as tracking that allows the officers on the ground to back away and affords the an airship the ability to oversee and track that individual in an effort to slow those pursuits and to lessen the dangers to the public. But even in those instances, it can get to a point where the suspects are just so hell-bent on escaping that they're willing to risk their life and lose their life and take the life of an innocent motorist, in which we have to completely disengage. And we have done that over the course of this last week, as well as in times past. And we will look at each of these instances with that type of close scrutiny and criticism when necessary. I am sorry for the loss of life that we've seen. It pains not just me, but our members that are out here trying to do the very best. And in this last week, we've provided counseling services and support for these officers who, in the aftermath of these pursuits, have been shaken with the terrible loss and the senselessness of the violence by the actions of these suspects who are trying to escape us. Year to date, I'll give you some statistics. Year to date, we've had 500, as of the end of July, we've had 597 pursuits. Last year to this time, that number was 484. That is an increase of 23%. When we look at some of the underlying factors that are increasing the instances of pursuits, we look at auto theft, which has increased this year versus last 5.4%. However, when you look at auto theft over a 2-year period, it has increased by more than 44%. So individuals stealing cars is resulting in officers, as they're going out and diligently working in patrol, coming across those vehicles, and pursuits have ensued. Also, shooting violence. As the year to date, we've had as I said earlier, 961 as of the 28th shooting victims versus 721 last year. That's a 33% increase. And over a 2-year period, it's a 45% increase. Instances, the vast majority of those shootings are occurring in public places, many times with individuals that are in vehicles and are shooting from car to car or shooting from a car to a person standing on the street. Officers then who are in the area or come across those vehicles are then attempting to make a stop, an investigative stop, and then these pursuits result. But we're mindful of the fact that shooting a victim, we don't want to see further victims by a pursuit that does not pass that balance test, that does not warrant a continuation. And in these instances, we are looking at this concentration to understand it and to ensure that there's adherence to our policies and that we're doing our best to protect the public in these very dangerous circumstances.
Chief, I appreciate your thoroughness very much. If I may, and just ask you quickly, in 2017, a grand jury report found the need to improve training. I'd love to get your reaction to that. Do you think your officers need better training?
Well, we always are open to additional training. Perishable skills, the pursuit driving, vehicle operation is what we consider in our industry a perishable skill, both mechanically, the physics of operating a vehicle in an urban environment in various and challenging conditions, emergency driving, but also the policy and what are our expectations of the command and control and the coordination and actually conducting a vehicle pursuit. One of the most dangerous things an officer can be engaged in. And one of the activities that we see the greatest loss of life amongst law enforcement as a profession is emergency driving and pursuit driving. So these are areas that we pay a great deal of attention to. I'm not prepared to tell you how many hours we've done this year versus last or over the course of the last 5 years, but I will say that this is something that is regularly spoken about in roll call rooms and briefings of our supervisors, in our command briefings. And then these instances are also part of the critical incident videos that we release both internally and externally as to the actions of the involved personnel.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chief. Does anyone else have a question for the chief? If you do, go ahead, you can ask your question.
Hey, Chief, I don't know if you can hear me. It's Eric over at Channel 4. Hey.
Hey.
So today is the first benchmark of the series of deadlines having to do with the vaccination mandate for all city employees. I know you probably don't have your numbers yet. The City Hall told us it's going to be like tomorrow at the very, very earliest. But as to enforcement, folks at the mayor's office have said it is simply impractical to try to punish officers who refuse to get the vaccine because staffing is short as it is. You have officers that clearly ignore the mask mandate that you've given out. What's your sense of how this is going to play out in the next couple of weeks? And aside from all of the encouragement you've been giving, what do you do about it?
Well, first of all, relentless discussions with our people about the critical nature and the lifeline that this vaccine represents. And I'm happy to report that our second week of mobile vaccinations have just completed last Friday. 202 additional members of the organization have been vaccinated. That's raising our overall rate of representation for department personnel with at least one dose to just under 54%, 53.9%. That means that 6,526 of our people have been vaccinated with at least one dose of either Johnson & Johnson or Pfizer or Moderna, I'm sorry. And yet we also know that I have 4 critically injured and ill individuals in the hospital today with COVID, and 2 in extremely grave condition. And so the challenge for us is that we still see infections that are occurring. They largely mirror the surrounding county because we work and live and exist within the very communities in which we serve, and with that, which subjects our unvaccinated individuals to the serious perils of this virus. We've also seen some crossover with individuals that have been vaccinated. We have a woman that was hospitalized this week who was vaccinated, and I'm hopeful for her full recovery. There is an issue of the timing of that vaccination in relationship to when she tested positive for COVID and now is hospitalized. And the mask mandate is being enforced. It is persistent. My workings moving around the department, I see people wearing face coverings and masks. And I expect that if people see command officers or supervisors see people not wearing their masks as required, that they direct them to put their mask on, and that there's consequences for people who fail to wear a mask. This is a safeguard for themselves as well as an expectation for them as servants and as community guardians in our various neighborhoods. The nature of the ordinance is identified clearly, and as I spoke about at commission a week ago, it is a lawful and the ability of an organization, of an employer to mandate vaccines is clear, especially when they identify a medical exception and a sincerely held religious belief. So those things have been announced, and today is, you're right, a day, Eric, that if you take the Moderna or Pfizer in order to be compliant with the effective date of the ordinance, today was the deadline for that. Now the deadline for Johnson & Johnson is a bit further down the road, and that it only requires a single dose. We've also required for people now, as of today, to file their notice of intent to claim a medical or sincerely held religious belief exception. And that's not just for the police department, that's for every department in the city. And the city will then go through those intentions as it continues to develop the underlying paperwork for both those exceptions. What hasn't been defined, and is a point of ongoing conversation with the EERC, that's the governing board made up of the mayor's office, the mayor himself, the CAO, CLA leadership of the council is its conversations meet and conferring with labor unions as to the consequences of individuals who have refused to be vaccinated and do not have a medical or sincerely held religious belief exception. And I hear a lot of conjecture, I hear a lot of people speculating, and it's a source of a tremendous pressure and turmoil amongst those that are not vaccinated within our organization. And what I'm taking the firm belief of is that we take this a step at a time. First, I would hope that the threat of removal or termination or so forth is not what gets people to take this vaccine, that they recognize it for its value in saving their life and potentially saving the life of a loved one or a community member in which they serve. But as to consequences for their failure, I'll look to the city's EERC for guidance and direction as to the employer-employee relationship and the consequences for not meeting this. This is not unique to the Los Angeles Police Department. It's not unique to the city of Los Angeles. We're seeing this; those questions arise throughout the United States, in the public sector as well as the private sector. And I believe the best course of action as a chief is to stress the importance of the vaccine, its vital utility in saving people's lives, and also taking a measured tone as to what consequences will be for people who fail or refuse to take the vaccine without an exception. It's not appropriate at this point for me to speculate or come up with conjecture of what may or could happen. I think that that's best taken in a measured and basis of fact rather than just, well, I have this idea.
Okay. I guess if you have another second, I would just say people in your department are supposed to be acting in the best interest of the public. And it seems so clear that getting the vaccine and wearing a face mask are the things that help the public the most. And yet you have thousands of employees who are not on board with that. And I would just wonder what you think of that.
I think of that this is not an issue that's unique to LAPD, that's unique to law enforcement, that's unique to public safety. I see people in every profession, every walk of life that has drawn a line in the sand on this issue of vaccination. And I'm not one of them. I was an early adopter. I recognize that people have seen and heard such terrible misinformation that this has become weaponized and politicized, and that has impacted people on a number of levels, including just the emotion of just resentment, and they're going to, they're not going to take this anymore. What I ask our people to do is to take a breath, follow the facts, follow the medical facts, and to make a responsible decision for themselves and for their loved ones, and also recognize that they are public stewards, that they have been entrusted by the public in a sacred duty. And it's a privilege to wear this badge and to be a member of this organization, and comes with that privilege responsibilities. But as to threatening and rattling a saber at this point, I think it would be ill-advised, and it's until I know what I can do. I learned this a long time ago. Don't walk around saying what you're going to do unless you know you can. And so I don't know what the consequences are going to be at this point. I look forward to us to overcoming that, and then we'll speak to it when that happens. Until then, I'm encouraging everyone in this organization to take advantage of this vaccine. It'll save their life.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any final thoughts?
No, appreciate you all. Thanks for your patience today.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This concludes our Chief's media availability. Have a great day.